Okay, so today we're diving into a place and time that, honestly, it kind of flips the script on what we think about medieval Europe. We're going way back 1,000 years
Yeah.
to 10th century Córdoba,
Right. It's often pictured as this, dark age across Europe, but Cordoba was different.
totally different.
Yeah.
I mean, the sources we have describe this city as just electric, a pulsating heart of knowledge,
Yeah.
made places like Paris seem, well, almost primitive in comparison.
Yeah, technologically, culturally, intellectually, it was leagues ahead at that point.
And smack bang in the middle of all this energy, there's this figure, Lubna of Córdoba.
Hmm.
And she really ought to be a household name, like up there with the big thinkers.
Hmm.
But often she's just a footnote, maybe a single line in a textbook, if that.
It's incredibly frustrating.
We need to fix that. Okay, let's unpack this.
Right.
Our mission today really is to pull her story out of the margins. She was way more than a footnote.
Yeah.
Scholar, teacher, library builder, even a kind of knowledge hunter.
That's exactly it. We're trying to piece together her real role from the fragments, mentions in court records, biographical notes. She wasn't just in the Umayyad Caliphate. She was fundamental to its intellectual engine, almost like the intellectual mother of that empire.
And what makes her story even more staggering are her origins. She wasn't born into privilege,
Not at all. She started life enslaved right there in Cordoba.
which makes her rise just, wow. How does that even happen in the 10th century?
Well, it speaks volumes about her, obviously. Just raw talent, incredible determination. But you're right, talent alone usually isn't enough back then.
No.
Her story is possible because of al-Andalus, because of that specific environment in Cordoba under the Umayyads.
That's the crucial bit, isn't it? We tend to think of the 10th century as super rigid, all about birthright. But the Umayyad court, especially under Caliph al-Hakam II, fostered something else. You called it a meritocracy of the mind.
Exactly. That's the key. It wasn't just that they liked smart people. Intellect was actively scouted, recruited, and used. It was a tool of the state.
A tool. How so?
Well, think about it. Running a huge, complex state like the Caliphate, competing culturally and militarily. They needed the best minds. They couldn't afford to ignore talent just because someone wasn't from the right family or, started out enslaved.
So it was almost a practical necessity for them. Find the brightest people wherever they come from to keep the state running smoothly.
Precisely. So for someone like Lubna, being brilliant wasn't just an accomplishment, it was a pathway to freedom, to influence. The account suggests she didn't just learn, she devoured knowledge. Every lesson was a step up.
So her education wasn't just allowed, it was actively encouraged because it served the caliphate's interests.
Right. Intellectual power was political power in that context.
Okay, but that kind of upward mobility, an enslaved woman reaching the highest levels, that must have caused some friction, with the old guard, the aristocracy.
Oh, I'm sure it did. But how did she navigate it? By making herself indispensable. She wasn't just clever, she built systems. She worked alongside Fatima, the Caliph's scribe, another woman in a key role. They weren't just there for show, they were running things.
Technical administrators.
Exactly. So if the old families grumbled, well, too bad. The Caliph needed Lubna's brain, her organizational skills, to manage his empire and especially his library.
Which brings us to that library, the Royal Library of al-Hakam II. It's legendary.
And what's fascinating here is just the sheer size of it. We're talking estimates of around 400,000 books.
400,000.
Yeah. Nothing else in Europe came close at the time. It's staggering.
It's almost impossible to imagine, especially with handwritten manuscripts. Each one a massive investment of labor.
Yeah.
And Lubna wasn't just, dusting the shelves.
No. She was the chief librarian, yes, but also the curator, the archivist, crucially, the architect of its whole organizational system.
Building the system, that's the key part.
Think about the complexity. Texts in Arabic, sure, but also Greek philosophy, Latin science, Jewish scholarship, Persian astronomy. To make that usable, you can't just stack them up. You need someone with encyclopedic knowledge across all these fields.
Medicine, philosophy, math.
Everything. She had to understand it all to create a catalog, a system, so scholars could actually find what they needed.
So we need to be clear for everyone listening. This isn't about checking books in and out. This is like creating the Dewey Decimal System, but for the entire known world's knowledge from scratch with quill and ink.
That's a great way to put it. She was building the metadata, the search engine, for the 10th century's greatest collection of knowledge.
Turning a giant pile of scrolls into a working research engine.
Exactly. Her cataloging made that knowledge accessible, usable for everything from, improving irrigation techniques to informing state policy, real-world impact.
Okay, but then she takes it another step further, right? She doesn't just manage what's already there.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. She wasn't passive. She actively went out to grow the collection.
Became a kind of globe-trotter of the mind.
That's a good term for it. Or maybe a literary detective. The sources say she traveled extensively.
Where did she go?
To the other great intellectual centers, Cairo, Damascus, maybe even Baghdad. These were rivals in a way, also collecting knowledge.
And travel back then. That wasn't easy.
Yeah.
We're talking dangerous routes, complex politics, carrying funds, arranging transport for fragile, priceless manuscripts over huge distances.
It was a massive undertaking, a mix of scholarly passion and sharp diplomacy. She was on a mission. Find the rare stuff, the unique texts Córdoba didn't have yet. Maybe the last surviving copy of something ancient.
Competing with other courts for these treasures.
Absolutely. Bringing that knowledge back wasn't just about books. It was about strengthening al-Andalus, boosting its prestige and its capabilities. It was an act of scholarly devotion, but also, statecraft.
And this really underscores how connected Muslim Spain was.
Right.
It wasn't some isolated place. It was a hub. And Lubna was a key node in this vast network, pulling knowledge in from everywhere.
Definitely. She was central to that whole process of preserving knowledge, especially classical knowledge that was being lost elsewhere in Europe. She was right there, finding it, acquiring it, bringing it back to be studied and translated.
And this knowledge wasn't just locked away. It fed back into the system, particularly through her teaching role, which honestly might be the most amazing part of her story.
It really is astonishing when you think about it. She goes from managing this vast library to directly teaching the absolute elite.
The princes.
Yeah.
The guys who would actually rule.
Yes. The future leaders of the caliphate. They sat and learned from her, a woman who had started life as a slave.
Incredible. And what was she teaching them? Not etiquette, I assume.
No. She taught them mathematics, logic, grammar, the hard stuff.
The practical stuff needed to run an empire.
Exactly. Math for taxes, engineering, logistics, logic for law, for clear thinking, administration. The same systematic rigor she used in the library, she was drilling into the next generation of rulers.
Shaping their minds, molding them into effective leaders.
It just shows the level of respect her intellect commanded. It clearly went beyond gender, beyond her origins. In that specific time and place, her mind was her authority, proof that women weren't just sidelined.
Wow. Okay, so she's this logical, mathematical powerhouse, organizing knowledge, teaching rulers. But there was another side, too.
Yes, and this adds another whole layer. The sources don't just talk about her intellect, they mention her literary soul. She was also a celebrated poet.
A poet, too. Seriously.
Apparently, yes. Her poetry was known, praised for being both intellectually deep and emotionally resonant, which is quite a combination.
So a polymath, a true, well, you called her a Renaissance woman, 5 centuries early.
Pretty much sums it up. She
Yeah.
had this incredible range.
The poetry itself.
That's the tragedy. We know she was a poet, that people admired her verses. But most of it, it's gone. Just whispers, mentions in other texts. A whisper in the wind, as one source puts it.
Man. Okay, so let's recap. We have this absolutely towering figure running Europe's biggest library, hunting knowledge across the known world, tutoring kings, writing celebrated poetry, and yet today, she's barely known. Why? If she was so important, why the silence? So what does this all mean?
This raises an important question, doesn't it? It gets to the heart of how history gets written and unwritten. It probably wasn't one single act like someone deciding to erase her, more like a slow fade.
How so?
Well, think about who wrote the histories later on. After the caliphate broke apart, things changed. Political climate shifted, often becoming more conservative. The later chroniclers tended to focus on, well, the usual suspects. The caliphs, the generals, the male figures with titles.
The great man narrative.
Exactly. And the women, even incredibly influential ones like Lubna, whose work was maybe seen as more technical or administrative, their contributions got downplayed, written out bit by bit, systematically erased, even if not always intentionally. It's the bias of the later storytellers.
Plus, the library itself didn't survive, did it?
No, that's the other tragedy. When Córdoba fell into chaos later, during the breakdown of the caliphate, that magnificent library, it was looted, books sold off, destroyed.
So the physical evidence of her work, her catalogs, maybe copies of her poems, largely vanished.
Precisely. When you lose the institution she built, you lose the primary records of her achievements. Her story then depends on scattered mentions by others, which makes her vulnerable to being forgotten.
It's a sobering reminder that history isn't just what happened, it's what gets recorded and remembered, and who does the recording. So we have a responsibility maybe to actively look for these gaps, to unearth these forgotten figures.
Absolutely. Her life is such a powerful example of what's possible when a society genuinely values intellect. It just shouts that genius doesn't have a gender or a social class. It just needs the right conditions to bloom.
From enslaved origins to commanding the knowledge of an empire, teaching its future kings. It's an incredible trajectory.
It really is. And her legacy, I think, it isn't just about the books or the library. It's a challenge to us. It forces us to rethink power and intellect in the 10th century. Her very existence changes the picture.
So a final thought for our listeners.
Yeah, maybe think about this. Lubna's story makes you wonder, who else is missing? How many other crucial figures, the administrators, the librarians, the translators, the people who built the intellectual infrastructure, are invisible in our standard histories, just because they weren't kings or warriors, and because later writers didn't value their kind of contribution? Lubna shows us there's likely a lot more digging to do.